Welcome to the Mental Insights Podcast, a conversation aimed at understanding all sides of mental health, addiction recovery, and homelessness. Each interview will include one's personal experiences and insights, or an expert's advice and knowledge within one of these fields. The goal is to promote awareness, guidance, and support for anyone who is affected by these challenges. Thank you all for listening. Welcome to the Mental Insights Podcast. This is your host, Brendan.cutuli. We are here today for Season 2, Episode number 9 with Stef Mir. Stef, thank you for taking this time out with me and being here on the Mental Insights Podcast. I appreciate you taking this time with me to give a little brief introduction about you. Stef has learned to live a positive lifestyle after facing serious mental health challenges. These experiences have led him to create a wellness blog called Wellness of Health, and actually an author of a book called Redesign Your Mind. Stef focuses his time on helping others through the challenges such as negative thinking, anxiety, and depression. And he will join the Mental Insights Podcast to speak about his story through mental health and his book, Redesign Your Mind. So again, thank you for joining us today and being here to talk with me.
Thanks, Brendan. And yeah, thanks for having me on and look forward to having a good chat.
Wonderful. Well, to get right to it, I like starting out with a statistic to really bring about who and what people are facing today. And it'll really lead into the topic of mental health throughout our conversation. And with that being, there's a company, Beyond Blue, that did a statistical analysis that says 1 in 7 children and young people aged between 4 and 17 years met the criteria for a diagnosis of a mental disorder in the last 12 months. And, with that being said, what is really the importance of mental health, and when did you learn the importance of mental health within your own life?
Yeah, it's a great statistic. For me personally, I probably did have challenges with mental health as a young person. But you don't really realize that, and they tell you not to worry and things like that. And it's not really an issue, especially for us millennials. We weren't really brought up with knowing about anxiety and depression. So for me personally, I didn't actually realize it until probably my early 20s. But then it really hit hard in my mid 20s. When I had my own business. And yeah, I just was really stressed out and anxious, and the physical symptoms really came on. And I just didn't believe that something to do with your mind could cause all these physical problems. And that was my body, the alarm system going off saying, hey, you need to change something in your life here. And that was the first real time I realized that, yeah.
I thank you for sharing that, because the topic of facing some of these challenges is always what people really have trouble with opening up and speaking about. And, this topic of struggle, I think, is always so important to bring about and share. And I think there's always something to truly learn from a struggle that we have in our life. And just to ask you, was there anything that you learned from these times of struggle within your own life that you were able to bring a positive out of?
Yeah, for me, the biggest thing I learned is that shit times will come and go. So if you're in the dumps right now and you're really down and out, things will turn around. And just as quickly as they can go bad, they can also go good just as quickly. So it's important. I especially find now that I've got some of those coping mechanisms, when you start to see the signs that you're getting run down or you're becoming anxious, that you start to put those things into place and start to stop that downward trend before it turns into something really big. And just to do what you can and have faith. Don't stress if it doesn't feel like it's not getting better. Give it time, and just go with the process and things will get better in time.
That's great. I'm glad you bring about this of, it's never an always lasting, feeling or emotion. And there's things that we have to continuously get through. And, to bring it back to once you started feeling these emotions, once you started feeling some of these struggles, why don't you speak about some of the steps that you took in order to, beat this depression and anxiety that were overtaking your life?
Yeah, so one of the greatest things you can do, and it sounds like off topic, but you need to find your own meaning. So, why are you here? What are you hoping to achieve in your life? And it might be just in the next few years or the next 5 years, but you really have to make sure that you're on the path that you want to be on. So, one of the things I say now is that it's better to be at the start of the right path instead of halfway down the wrong path. And for me, that's where I was going. I was halfway down a path that wasn't right for me. And maybe it was right a few years ago, and that's okay. But you got to recognize that it's never too late to change direction, and people change. So don't be hard on yourself if you want to do something different. So that's one of the first steps. Find what you want to do, and then you need to start practicing things day in, day out. So things like rewriting your thoughts, writing a journal as well, exercising. I mean, the statistics that say they're all different, but most of them say that exercising for 30 minutes a day, 4 to 5 times a week, will reduce depression by 20%. So that's something very simple and easy that anyone can do. Doesn't matter how good you are, doesn't matter what other challenges you have in life, that's really going to help you. Your diet, eating high processed sugar things and alcohol, they all feel great at the time, but they're going to make you worse. And again, this ties into what I said before, that when you see you're starting to go down, that's when you make the change. It doesn't mean that we avoid chocolate and alcohol forever, because I love that. I love having a cocktail or something, on the weekend. But when I see that things are starting to go down, you got to pull that back, and you got to recognize the signs as well. So they're probably the key things I would say to start doing. And don't be scared as well to see a psychologist. In my book, I talk about a psychologist and rebranding them as a personal trainer for your mind. If someone wants to lose weight, they go and see a personal trainer, and everyone really talks them up and says, wow, that's awesome. Like, you've got a PT, love it. They'll put photos of their progress, and it's a great thing. But if you do that with your mind, it's shunned upon, and no one wants to do that. So I'm trying to change that culture for your own happiness, that, they're there to help you on that journey as well. So there's some of the things I would say to give a go.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you shared those, and I love that perspective about it being similar to a personal trainer, because that really brings about a different perspective that people can say, oh, all right, it makes sense that I could continue to work within my mind, and it truly is a similar approach, and that's something that we need to change regarding the stigma that we face within our society. And a lot of these things you brought about were many lifestyle changes, many just simple habits that you can have throughout your day. But for many people, we all know that it's good to exercise well, eat well, and all these things. But can you speak about the transition of, taking the step of learning how to educate yourself and then actually putting into practice?
Yeah, I guess tying in first of all with the stigma, I was one of the worst people with stigma as well. And that's one of the things that made my anxiety and depression a lot worse. Because as an ambitious person and always been an overachiever, I felt that I couldn't do those things. So, first of all, remove that stigma and just accept, okay, I need to work on this. So once you do that, one thing I really did that I enjoyed was reading a lot of books, because hearing other people's stories and what they did to get through it really made me feel confident that it's possible and that I wasn't broken. It wasn't me that there was something wrong. You mentioned a statistic before. There's numerous statistics. I think in the US, one of the stats I had was that I think 1 in 13 adults take antidepressants. So you're not alone. And a lot of people are treating this, just with one side of things, but there's a lot you can do on the other side as well. So, yeah, read a lot of books, get knowledge, and find what works for you. Um, what I say might work, might just work for me. Something totally different might be working for you. You don't give up, just keep trying and keep searching for different ways to go about it.
That's great. And you were speaking about how to really identify when things are maybe going in the wrong pattern. Can you speak about maybe some aspects of how you can use that identification to understand whether maybe you should stop having a drink throughout your week, or maybe you should change the way of, how you're starting your day, what kind of a morning routine could be?
Yeah, so I guess the things to identify would be different for everyone. The first time I really went through it for me was more my stomach. So, connection and your gut. I would get stomach aches and I wouldn't be able to eat. Um, Now I find I get a sense, I might get a headache, or not a headache per se, but a bit of dizziness, or vertigo. Um, I might feel it inside that, I might feel a bit down. Um, and these types of things are little triggers that you can say, okay, what's going on? And then you can adjust accordingly. So if it's something that I feel I'm working too hard, then it means, okay, I need to have a bit of fun and just have a night off and, go out and have fun with friends and loosen up a bit. If it's something more of a depressive state, you need to then uncover those real reasons. Why am I feeling this way? And then start to make that change. I find that depression, for me anyway, there's an underlying reason always. Whereas anxiety might be more to do with, the fear of the unknown, or uh, having too much to do as well. So yeah, and you make your changes accordingly with that.
Identification within some of these can be such a challenge for many, and trying to notice some of the habits that you create can always be a challenge, and trying to see it from a third party perspective is always something that people have struggles with. And you speak a little bit about how sharing this message is of the utmost importance, and I think sharing your story, sharing what you're going through, I think is another key component of what we're doing within the mental health community, of trying to share that we are similar, we all go through similar things. And before we transition about really talking about your book, I want you to just take this time to share what inspired you to share your own story, what inspired you to just reach out and say, this is what I went through.
Yeah, for me, Brendan, you talk about recognizing the signs, and that's a challenging thing. I'd never recognized the signs for years. And even when I had doctors telling me there's nothing wrong with you, it's anxiety, I still didn't believe it. So for me, I just wanted to help people understand that, this is anxiety. It's not a brain tumor. The doctors cleared you, the MRIs cleared you. Um, it's not some mystical sickness that's causing you to have low energy or something like that. You really got to understand and accept that it's anxiety or depression. Um, and I found, tying it back to the books, a lot of the books that I read were by really successful people or psychologists or someone that studied the mind for years. And I found that there was a gap in the space of someone telling their own story and just saying, hey, I'm a normal guy or girl, and here's the challenges I had. And from what I've heard from a lot of people, the first, 40 or 50 pages is really, raw insight into someone's life story and how they came about these feelings. So I just wanted to then connect those things to some of the tools you can use as well. So, yeah, I just think that for me personally, I like a good story and I want to relate to someone, and that's going to make me take on these tools a lot better. So that's why, what inspired me to do it.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you were able to share that and speak more about, reaching out and sharing your own perspective, because in turn, this is what helps more people share their story and come about what they've experienced and maybe what challenges they've faced so far. But it's really something that's admirable that you're able to say, this is what I face and we're all fairly similar. We just have, a different navigation, a different approach of how we're going throughout this. So I think that's awesome. And I think this is a good time to, really wrap up part one. And within part two, we'll speak more about your book, Redesign Your Mind, and really talk about some of the topics at hand and really dive deeper into this conversation within mental health, really speaking about your experiences within anxiety and depression, but what you're trying to provide in terms of resources and perspective changes in order to take that next step. So first off, I'd just love to thank everybody for listening, and thank you for being here, Stef, for providing this part one of episode number 9, season 2 of the Mental Insights podcast. And for anybody listening now, be sure to tune in to part 2 of this episode, where we'll speak more about Stef's book, Redesign Your Mind. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all for listening to today's episode of the Mental Insights podcast. Make sure to reach out to today's guest or myself if you need any advice, guidance, or support in your life today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and review to this podcast so we know what you thought of this episode. I look forward to being in touch with you all in the next episode. I hope you all have a wonderful day.